Hi friends, Pastor Terry here. We are Dalhousie Church, and this is the 10-Minute Coach. Again, we're in the 10 Commandments, and here we are this week in Commandment number 8, thou shalt not steal. And again, we're taking just a little different perspective on it, turning it on its ear in a sense, with the affirmative. What is it that it's calling us to do? It's calling us to be those who are givers rather than takers. And of course, that's not to minimize at all the severity of breaking the law, being someone who steals something that's not yours. But this idea that it's not my pie, it's not. There are these things that we want that we are not to have, or at least we're not to have them now. And so we're attempting to kind of get our minds around this, and in the process of this, of course, we're seeing that the Ten Commandments are quite linked together. Ultimately, when we get to Jesus saying the greatest commandment is love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and then that we're seeing that that's the first four put together. It is also, so that's Deuteronomy chapter 5. But it's also Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4, the Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Okay? Deuteronomy 6, 4, the Shema comes from the first word of that. Hear, O Israel. Shema Yisrael. Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. And then it goes on to say, the love of the Lord your God. Jesus went on and then said, and the second commandment is like unto it, love your neighbor as yourself. And of course, we're seeing that the commandment 4, about Sabbath, keeping it holy, but certainly 5 through 10, are about prioritizing one another. Even 4, everybody gets, so it's keep the Sabbath holy unto the Lord. It's got this double-sided thing. Everyone gets a day off, even your men servant, maid servants, the foreigner among you, even your livestock get to have a day off. Don't work your oxen or your draft horses or whatever it is that God's given to you. So it was really quite an extraordinary concept in the in its day. What I'm getting at, though, is love your neighbor as yourself is really expressed in these commandments 4 through 10, and so it's this that has kind of led me to assert that what we're attempting to get at, what we're starting to see, is that the commandments really show us God's character, that they show us who He is. I've invited you in the second question. Let me say this about the first question in the back of the sermon notes. I hope I haven't triggered anything for you if you have been the victim of theft. And it's still triggering something in you, an anxiety or anything like that. Please get help. We would be happy as a church family to help you get counseling help. If it's not something Tony or I can help you with, which our skills are limited, but to a professional counselor who's going to help you from a Christian worldview, process the hurt, the pain, the anxiety, the fear that perhaps was forced upon you. These are real things, and we want to pay attention to those. But question then number 2 talks about God's character, and I've invited you to dig into that a little bit. What are the character qualities of God that first come to mind? I think most of us think of God as love. What would other characteristics of God be? There's a theological distinction here that I'll just give you a heads up on, where we'll talk about the character of God. We'll also talk about the attributes of God. And to some extent, there's certainly overlap, they're certainly related, but when we talk about the attributes of God, it tends in a more philosophical direction. He is, immutable. He is always present. Get my list up here. He is eternal. Those are the kinds of words that we use around the attributes of God, where character of God tends toward things like loving, kind, merciful, good. These are the kinds of things that we tend to talk about under the list of the characteristics of God, but they're related. Again, you can't artificially separate them, but it might be worth your while to do a little digging. What are the characteristics of God? Which one of those are the kinds of characteristics that He calls us to embody in in representing him to our world. And I've gone on to talk a little bit about kind of the community we want to be, that Moses was attempting to create a community, was admonishing the people, God speaking through Moses, to create a certain kind of community in the first people of God. Well, what of those community characteristics ought to be true of us as a church? Can we learn from that? And then ultimately we kind of get down to that third point in the message, which is the honor we want to give. That in great part this is about us honoring and reverencing God in ways that are appropriate for Him as we attempt to represent Him in His world. I've invited you to then go to a place where, for those of you who are followers of Jesus, it was maybe years or even decades ago when you first wrestled with, or maybe supremely wrestled with, the question, am I in a relationship with God? And I've had friends who have not known the name of Jesus to put to that conversation, and yet would say, I think there's something familiar about this conversation. I've been in a relationship with God. And this is an invitation to maybe dig deeper in that, because God supremely reveals Himself to us in Jesus Christ. And if you don't know Jesus, this is an opportunity to get to know Jesus. Now, the other reason that I mention this here is because it is common for Christians and non-Christians alike to misunderstand the nature of law, the nature of the thou shalt nots. And we misunderstand it. We tend to misunderstand it in this way. We look at the thou shalt nots and we say, well, by doing these things, by listening to the law, by obeying the Ten Commandments, somehow I will be made right with God. He's going to have to, I can ingratiate myself to Him by my good behavior. Good behavior is a good thing, but it won't save you. And this is the problem that we are facing. And so if we go to Romans chapter 3, and this is where I've invited you to go, Romans chapter 3, verse 20, where Paul says, through the law, we become conscious of our sin. I've suggested it's like holding a mirror up that we look in. He goes on in a couple verses later in Romans chapter 3 to say that righteousness is given through faith in Jesus Christ. So it's not given through obedience to the law, righteousness, being made right with God, being declared right, good, pure, holy. Can't do that through my hard work or my obedience to the rules that God has laid out for the first people of God on behavior and how they should behave. Still good rules for us, but we look at them in a different way now that we're not the people going into the land. But righteousness is given through faith in Jesus Christ to all who believe. And this is the great divide. I'm trying to make sure that you are clear that your behavior cannot save you. That doesn't mean we should go off, and Paul actually addresses this in his letter to the church in Rome. You can't just go off and behave any old way you want. It doesn't give us impunity against sin. But what it brings into sharp focus is the law actually never could save. It didn't save Israel. They were saved by grace through faith. We're told that Abraham believed God, faith, and it was accounted to him or attributed to him as righteousness. He put his confidence in God that God would and could do what Abraham could not do. He was saved the same way you and I were saved. He looked forward to the cross of Jesus Christ and the forgiveness that would come. We look back to that. But we are all saved by faith in Jesus Christ, the language Paul uses here. You can read some of this. Paul's language in the book of Romans is complicated. It takes some very careful reading to understand, to follow the sentence structure of what he's doing. If you read it in the New Living Translation, it's a little bit easier, but then they have to bring some interpretation into it, where like the NIV or even more literal is the ESV translations. Kind of lay it out for you, and you just got to do the hard work of reading it through. I want to encourage you to consider doing that. I'm going to kind of bounce over to the overtime video and talk about how God grows us through adversity, because that's kind of another subject that just we touch on in the Ten Commandments. And we touch on it in the next couple of chapters, actually, if we work our way through the book of Deuteronomy. Because in this series, I've really been hoping that we would go beyond just the 10 and see how the book of Deuteronomy itself has been setting up the first people of God to represent him well. Because we are the new people of God, those who are followers of Jesus, who have by faith believed in Jesus and put our confidence in him, that he will make up the deficit for our sin and enable us to be in right relationship with God. We are now called to represent God accurately. We're seeing it in the Ten Commandments. We will see it in the New Testament as we continue our studies. And in the fall, we're going to go to the book of Ephesians, and Paul's going to put some language to that we're going to need to hear as well. I'm out of time. This is now the 11-minute coach. I'm Pastor Terry Lee, and we are Dalhousie Church. Bless you, and bye for now.